Underground, the Liberty Report.
Well, hello, America. Welcome to Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report. We're broadcasting live from the studios of PRN Radio Network. That's the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. Today's Monday, June 15th, 2015. It's 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and that means it's 5 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. I'm Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host Scott Ferrarello is here with me, too, and we appreciate you tuning in. We have a very special guest today. His name is Charles C. Johnson, and I see that he's on the switchboard. So let me get this intro done, and then we'll get him right on here. Our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at PRN Radio Network, are open for you. A few of our awesome colleagues, Lynn, AstroTurf, and Famous Anna, are in the chats putting the links, articles, sources, and documents in there, so you have those all available to you. And thank you for that nice courtesy, my friends. Our colleagues are more than just people in the chat. They're the best research team, journalists, analysts that I've ever met. Also, Lynn's mother-in-law passed away, and I just want to give our sincere condolences and wish her mother-in-law Godspeed. Anyhow, today we also have a lot of news to share, and like I said, we have a great guest coming up. His name is Charles C. Johnson. I'll give him a proper introduction. Before we do, though, I have to first do a short disclaimer, and that's just to let everybody know that whatever is said on this show is solely my responsibility and not that of our gracious hosts or sponsors. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts and or guest hosts or phone callers of the PRN Radio Network do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else members of the Watchmen of America program or the Patriot Resistance website, either in past, present, and future broadcasts. All right, well, now that this is out of the way, I'm going to open up my co-host's microphone, say hello to Scott, and then we're going to open up Charles's microphone. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Joanne, how you doing?
Very well, very well. How was your weekend?
Oh, it was great as usual.
Well, our guest is here, and I'm all excited. I'm going to open up his microphone, and I'm going to introduce everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles C. Johnson is the founder and editor-in-chief of GutNews.com. He was also a contributor to the Daily Caller and the Blaze. And I'm looking at his bio, and it says his work is featured on Drudge Report, which I've seen. He's also the author of Why Coolidge Matters. So before I go any further, I'd like to welcome you. Hello, Charles.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on. Boy, am I glad to talk to you. Do you want to tell anybody else any more about yourself before we jump into having a great conversation?
No, I mean, basically, I'm a journalist. I run a crowd-funded, crowdsourced website called GotNews.com, and I'm interested in kind of how ideas spread on the internet. I run a research business that does quite well, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to kind of talk about the Twitter situation and on kind of the fate of the internet generally.
Okay, cool. Let's start with the Twitter situation. I know that there's a guy named D-Ray, and all of our listeners know all about what's going on with Baltimore and, about the radicals and the funding and things like that. But would you explain to them what happened over at Twitter? And I was watching that conversation. I know you were talking about just outing information. But
yeah, so
go ahead.
The basic thing that happened was about 2 weeks ago, I was engaged in a conversation about D-Ray McKesson, who is one of the radicals that's leading the Black Lives Matters protest. And I was planning on revealing some information about him. A number of people had asked me to do some research, and they solicited that research on Twitter, offered to pay me some money for that research, and so that's kind of the background there. D-Ray McKesson and others thought that the language that I used to take out, which was actually language that was initially used by somebody else, was a threat, although he never informed law enforcement, he never informed anyone really about it. He was just using it to get himself attention and sympathy. And so McKesson went on CNN, he went on a number of platforms, and they used the
the occasion of me using the takeout metaphor to suspend me without any due process, without anything on Twitter's platform.
Yeah. Now, see, I had been watching that conversation. I don't do a lot of talking over there in people's conversations, but I do lurk a bit. And I saw that you were talking about discovering and broadcasting information on him. And, take him out was for doxing, I saw the back and forth. I see D. Ray McKesson and his followers just, being really, really bad. I've seen more threats than that come out of there. I mean, I've seen threats to kill cops and everything else, and things that he has retweeted that included threats. So when you had gotten booted off, my crew and I decided to do a little bit of researching too, and we have found an amazing amount of information on him. And he was on CNN, and somebody asked him where he got his funding. He told CNN that he got his funding from friends and people who were donating. Well, he's got a lot more funding than that. He's got Teach for America funding. He's got Amnesty International funding. He's also got funding from the Ford Foundation for one of his philanthropies that he does. Also, they get that Teach for America that he's part of. They get funding from the states and cities too. So,
indeed, he has had a long history of being involved in sort of radical activism. He was an activist at Bowdoin College, where he met Ken Chenault, who was one of the executives of American Express, who was talked about at one time as being a future Obama cabinet member. He has been he's been feted by none other than the various black nationalist groups that are out there. He's retweeted things calling for the murder of people like Sean Hannity, and he's a very black nationalist, black supremacist type who is interested in violence in our cities and propagating that and encouraging that. He does not do a lot of fact checking and due diligence with his police brutality narrative, and because of that, various people have played him by making up police brutality situations, which he retweets to his massive number of followers. And previously, he was he worked in the human resources department of the Minneapolis school system, and he has been a part of and been involved with a number of programs related to Bowdoin College that have to do with radical black activity. He's a homosexual, and he's used this as kind of a way to ingratiate himself with a lot of left-wing causes that are funded by whites. Although he's also got ties to Louis Farrakhan and to a number of other more violent types as well. And what I've been doing and what I'm in the process of doing now is kind of telling the story about the Black Lives Matter protesters at Ferguson and the ways in which they use technology like Twitter to plot and to carry out riots in our cities. And one of my advisors, one of my friends, is a black gentleman who's a really good researcher who lived in Miami during the riots that occurred there in the 90s. And what his experience was that these riots that were going on in the cities were very well orchestrated. The people were wearing all these tens of thousands of dollars worth of technology and high-end designer clothes. And he and I were trying to discover who was behind all of it. Obviously, we know George Soros' operation is behind it with the Open Society Institute. We know that there's a lot of money that's being pumped into this activism. And the media, of course, likes this story because it enables them to cover riots and race relations, which drives up their attention, particularly MSNBC and CNN. And so when CNN did a libelous story against me saying that I wanted to assassinate D. Ray McKesson, which is rather ridiculous. Nobody believes that, except CNN apparently. They were really kind of playing into this. And the idea is that Twitter, being the blackest of the social networking platforms, has really taken advantage of this. They've really taken advantage of this kind of lack of information on the part of the American public, about what's really going on. Twitter, of course, has been used to plot terrorist attacks. It's been used by Anonymous to plot DDoS attacks, such as against my website. 3 DDoS attacks against my website occurred. And it's been used for a number of kind of dangerous things. And right now, Jack Dorsey, who's going to be the interim CEO of Twitter after July 1st, and who is a very good friend of DeRay McKesson, the two of them are kind of using the platform in ways that are quite damaging to the interests of those of us who believe in a free and fair society.
Right. I agree with you there. I'm, wondering what Jack's deal is. I saw the photograph of him and DeRay with Janetta Elzy, who is DeRay's partner. They have a organization called We the Protesters, and that was also founded by DeRay. We the Protesters is funded with money from Funders for Justice and, again, through the Ford Foundation. There's tons of money going around. As a matter of fact, the Minnesota governor said about Teach for America, says it's a well-established national program with revenues totaling $270 million for fiscal year 2011. That was the most recent annual report, with total expenses of $219 million. So it says TFA's net assets increased by over $50 million and now total over $350 million. So add that to Soros's $33 million, and then you have all of these other programs. Now, Teach for America is also associated with AmeriCorps, and they're getting federal funding through the Department of Justice as well. So
yeah, I'm a little hesitant to kind of throw Teach for America in with it. I'm not necessarily a Teach for America fan. In fact, I've written a number of things critical of them in the past, how they don't really properly understand race relations in the United States, how a lot of their, a lot of the benefits that they claim exist from their teachers going into the public schools are overstated or just factually inaccurate. But I do think it's interesting the degree to which DeRay McKesson and Nata and some of these others have gotten institutional philanthropic support for what essentially amounts to racial agitation and violence in our cities. Whereas Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and others have figured out how to commandeer the attention of everyone using the mainstream media, DeRay McKesson and others have figured out how to use the new media, the new social media, to advance their interests. And if you look at somebody like McKesson, if you look at how he's positioned himself, how he's talked about what he's done, he said that there are the only two places where radical activity is allowed in the United States are Twitter and, of course, the classroom, which are two things that I don't think most American people would want him near. And he's been very involved in Baltimore and Ferguson and in a number of these other kind of riots in McKinney. And what he is he's a professional agitator, and he is allowing some of these riots and some of this activities to essentially descend into an anti-white movement and an anti-cop movement. And it's unfortunate that that's the position we're in now, but that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, I only see this getting much, much worse, too. As a matter of fact, he even received the Howard Zinn Award. Anybody who knows of Howard Zinn, that most of our textbooks in the classrooms are Howard Zinn inspired, and he was a radical communist. He's also got this partner, Janetta Elzy, who is now working for Amnesty International, and you know that Amnesty International is also associated with Soros as well as getting government money too. So, and that's what they do.
No,
Go ahead.
You're right. There's a serious danger in the way in which all these liberal groups are funded and the way in which the information is released. I think what scares me the most about it is that they've essentially turned whole sectors of our society into lawless areas. And so they've turned, the blue flu that's going on with the Baltimore Police Department is a good indication of this, where they've scared the cops into actually performing their duties, and and because of that, there are whole sectors of American cities that are essentially unpoliced. And we've seen that with the increase in the number of blacks who are getting killed in the cities. We've seen that in the ways in which police are rightfully fearing for their lives. And, of course, there's this push right now on the part of a lot of these activists to go and take video cameras and to make all the police wear video cameras so that they can supposedly cut down on police brutality. But we've seen that those video incidents are highly subject to interpretation. And
right.
a lot of the times it's not entirely clear what's going on in them, such as what happened, I guess, last weekend in McKinney.
Right. That in McKinney, I don't know where that's going to go. It was really way blown up out of proportion. There were some things I was uncomfortable with, but there was other things I'm seeing way out of proportion. I'm wondering though, where does it go from here? The summer is on its way, and I know now they tried to get it going in Louisville, Kentucky. There was a situation the day before yesterday where a man who was armed with a flagpole, one of those ones that they stand up out in front of variety stores and stuff that say they're open. Well, he went after the cop with that, and he ended up getting killed, and I'm seeing that starting to heat up. So I don't know if the whole circus is going to be heading out that way.
Well, one of the things that this is unfortunately going to do is it's going to encourage a lot of Americans to move and live in areas that are racially homogenous. Because if you look at like what happened in McKinney, it was essentially a bunch of people were crashing pools in Texas, and some people didn't want their association to have to deal with this. They called the police, and then there was a lot of rowdy behavior on the part of the children, or of the teens and early 20s, and some of that rowdy behavior was captured on camera by the police. And when the police have to effect an arrest, it's very difficult for them to do that kind of thing.
Right.
And obviously, if you look at like the millions of people in law enforcement, and if you have cameras on them at all times, you're going to get a certain percentage of them who are bad actors just by virtue of the law of averages. And so what ends up happening is each one of these incidents are blown out of proportion to kind of change the reality of what actually happened in a number of these encounters. And it's very frightening. I think the American public should be very aware of what's going on here. Unfortunately, I've been silenced on Twitter, but we are planning on litigating the question in the courts. It's obviously deleterious and it's obviously dangerous for people to claim that I'm trying to openly assassinate people for $500 a pop, when in fact the takeout language or the takedown language is language that's used by all manner of people, by Slate, by the Washington Examiner, by a number of publications. And so there have been people who've risen to my defense. I mean, Alan Dershowitz, the famous civil liberties lawyer for whom I once worked when I was a teenager. Harvey Silverglate has also defended me, another civil libertarian, as has the publication Slate, the liberal publication. So the really interesting question is why it is that so many conservatives haven't rushed to defend me. But I think the answer is that we kind of know that a lot of the conservative movement is more interested in advancing its own pocketbook. It's sort of the conservative ink industry rather than in actually defending the rights and defending the civil liberties of Americans, which is something that I was pushing back against at Got News. So I intend to continue revealing information about the Black Lives Matter's criminal element, and I intend to continue pushing this information out into the public because I think the public has a right to know.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what's your status at Twitter? Are you barred for life? Do you have backup? I
am apparently barred for life. Yeah, I've created a number of rival accounts, which they've shut down. Free Chuck Now, Citizen Trolling, Chuck C. Johnson, GotNews.com, which was an automated account, and other accounts that had been created to support me have also been shut down. And I think this raises a lot of interesting questions about Twitter and about the role in which Twitter plays. Jason Calacanis, who is an angel investor who's very involved in Twitter issues and who's very, who's one of the first investors in Uber, has also defended me. I'm the first person in the history of Twitter to be banned, have a permanent ban against me. They're suppressing and shutting down other accounts as well. But this raises really interesting free speech considerations. Jack Dorsey, of course, famously sold Twitter as a broadcast platform for the Internet, as a utility, is how he described it. And obviously we regulate utilities that are predatory, and that's kind of what Twitter's become. The head of their safety department is this radical social justice warrior woman by the name of Del Harvey, who previously, her name was, I think it was Ashley Shea, and she was involved in the group Perverted Justice, which was going after what they claimed were child molesters, but occasionally they got innocent men trapped up in that. And she has no real concern for civil liberties, which is something that I find very dangerous, this kind of combination of tech power with a lack of concern for civil liberties. We're seeing this on a number of platforms. I mean, right now we're seeing Reddit be censored by people, by Ellen Powell and the social justice warriors who are working with her. We're seeing this on GoFundMe, where they're shutting down support funding pages for cops who are involved in, for police officers who are accused, not convicted, accused of committing crimes. And of course, we're seeing it with the rapid approach of trying to end gun rights in this country, which are things that I've fought against in the past.
Yeah, it seems to me that somebody has infiltrated Twitter, and they're in a cooperation somehow with government. They have to be using it as a data mine because, there's a lot of people that have said a heck of a lot worse than the benign comment you made. What you did, though, was you threatened to expose them. They've
suppressed the rights of white men, but not blacks who've actually openly talked about murdering people, about stabbing them, about murdering me.
I've seen them.
Twitter is becoming a very anti-white place, and what's happening is that Twitter has a serious problem with how it's actually monetizing an open protocol system, which is probably beyond the scope here. But basically, the problem that they have is that they want advertising dollars,
right?
And the issue that they're having is that as the network scales, it becomes harder and harder to advertise on the platform, and so because of that, they're also misstating their earnings reports. There are all kinds of issues associated with that. So it's going to be very interesting. My sense is that Jack Dorsey will not be able to pull the company out of its doldrums, that the stock price will continue to slide, in much the same way that Reddit is now having issues because its users are revolting against the totalitarian nature of the speech police. And the sad thing is that all these different companies are now being are committing suicide all around us, but that they're giving market opportunities to entrepreneurs like me and others who see a real opportunity here to tell the truth, to break real news, and to really go about it in that way. So I'm more optimistic, but we are suing Gawker this week, the publication that libeled me, saying that I crap on the floor and a number of other nasty things. And then we're going to be continuing to use. We can't get our satisfaction in the court of public opinion because they're silencing me and they're trying to shut down my website. And we're going to have to take it to the court system. And so that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the direction we're going in.
Yeah, well, see, that you threatened to expose them, and he's a player, so that made them nervous. I saw a few people that were trying to defend you. As a matter of fact, I saw one guy who had said he was going after D-Ray for something, and he said, I'd really like to tell you what I feel, but I wouldn't want to get suspended. And here's D-Ray running around, F the police and all that, and all those people all around him. But the minute you say something, it's like, help police, help everybody, I'm in trouble, come get me. That sounds like a double standard with that, too. What do you mean, getting suspended for that? And like you said about Twitter, there are a lot of people leaving Twitter. They're being chased off. Some people, their accounts are suspended. One of our colleagues had her account suspended, and all she was doing was exposing jihadis that she was finding. And they suspended her for quite some time. They got everybody over a barrel.
You should put me in touch with her because I think there's a class action lawsuit potential here. I think the racial discrimination where they disproportionately target whites over blacks for suspending accounts I think these are all stories that Twitter doesn't want to get out there, and so I think it'll be interesting to see as time goes on. But I wish I could stay. I'm happy to come back on at another time, but I do have to go in just a moment. But if there's anything else, I'm happy to address it. But.
Well, no, you know what to do, though, before you go. Tell everybody how they can find you and what your venues are, and then we'll say goodnight.
So my account is GotNews, GOTNEWS.com. That's where you can find my work. You can also find me at editor@gotnews.com. And, of course, I'm still on Facebook. My account there is Charles C. Johnson, and there's a picture of David with the head of Goliath, which is my avatar there. So I'm happy to reach out to people, I'm building up kind of new companies now, and I'm happy to meet citizen researchers, citizen journalists, because I think it's really going to come down to us to kind of change the direction that the country's going in. And we need to start figuring out how to build our own communities and not necessarily rely on the left-wing community as we kind of advance the arguments and the issues at play.
Well, thank you very much, and believe me, you'll be hearing from us, and we have the team of the most fantastic researchers. We have everything from foreign policy analysts to DHS insiders, so we will definitely be in touch.
Please all reach out to me. I'm happy to hear from all of you, and please have a nice evening.
Yeah, you too. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles C. Johnson. Thank you, Charles. You have a great night.